Hello and welcome to the NTI Pod Talk. My name is Dianne and I'm Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute. Join me as I talk to interesting people in the field of health and wellness, food and farming, and anywhere else we find conversations that matter to our community. By listening, you'll learn a little about NTI and a lot about the things and people around you that make a difference for your wellness. Welcome, and let's get started. Hello there. Welcome back to another edition of the NTI Pod Talk. This is Dianne Kaler, Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute, and I am so pleased to be talking with a recent graduate of our program who has a really fascinating story. Adriana Vernon is our guest, and I'm going to ask Adriana to kind of jump into her story from before she even thought, maybe even thought about going to nutrition school. And then we'll come to what made you search out NTI a little bit later. But Adriana, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to be talking to you, and I'm really interested to hear your story.
Thank you, Dianne, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell my story.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, your story starts in 2020 when you got a medical diagnosis. And let me just say right now, just to make an initial disclaimer, anything we say in today's conversation is not medical advice. It's not intended to be medical advice. It is your personal story. So,
Correct.
Tell us about a medical diagnosis that you got in 2020, and let's just get started with your story.
Yes, I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, stage 2, no lymph node involvement. However, when they did the biopsy, it came back as a grade 3, which is considered quite an aggressive breast cancer. So I do have a personal family history of breast cancer. My mom and my sister both had been diagnosed. My sister at age 40, my mom at age 60. And I thought I had done a lot of things differently in my life, focused on eating organic, wasn't a smoker, exercised, all of those good things. But here I was at age 50, guess what would that be? 55, having my own diagnosis. And both my mom and my sister had gone through standard of care. So when I originally started this, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And so I decided that I would go ahead and see an oncologist, meet with an oncologist, kind of trying to figure out what I should be doing with my diagnosis. And in the meantime, I had friends who said, you really should look at possibly having a naturopathic doctor on board. They had friends who had worked with a naturopathic doctor through their own diseases, whether it's autoimmune or cancer. And I thought, you know what, that sounds really good to me. And so that's what I did. I decided with my naturopathic doctor's help that I would go ahead and follow a standard of care treatment because of the nature of my cancer, even though I really had a hard time agreeing in the beginning to do that. I had to have a lot of soul searching and a lot of discussions with my family to get to a point where I was okay with doing standard of care.
Mm-hmm.
So that started, my standard of care started in October, and I finished treatment the next April of 2021. And I had my naturopathic doctor on board from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And working with her, learned so much about the metabolic approach to cancer. Mm-hmm. And that was where I would say my journey really began.
Mm-hmm. So many things.
Yeah.
What was the process like finding a naturopathic doctor who you felt you could trust, because you know, in conventional medicine, oncologists, they sort of already show up with a presumed level of expertise and, again, warranted or not, but they already show up with a presumed level of expertise and knowledge and I'm here to help you and I'm gonna make sure that you make it through this. So what was the process like finding a naturopathic doctor?
So for me, I was very fortunate. I had several good friends who had other friends who'd gone through a cancer diagnosis and treatments, and they suggested I look for a naturopathic doctor that was designated as a FABNO, which is, I believe it stands for Fellow of American Board of Oncology with through the naturopathic oncology.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So that was an important designation. And so I looked for somebody in Colorado that had that designation,
Mm-hmm.
and I found her. She at the time was working at a clinic up in Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during COVID too, right? So
right. Yeah.
So we call it my cancer COVID journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just met online, and
Mm-hmm.
I met with her, and I probably met with her every month, but she had a treatment plan for me and switched things up for me as my standard of care treatment was changing. But
Mm-hmm.
I felt that designation, having her be part of it as a fellow with the Naturopathic Board of Oncology, was important for me.
Yeah. Right. And then how did your conventional oncology team, if you had a team, how did they take the addition of a holistic naturopathic approach, or not? You certainly weren't replacing, but addition in your care.
Yes. In my case, and I feel so fortunate. I was given the name of an oncologist that is through the UC Health Medical System, and she happened to be in Highlands Ranch. Again, this was the name I got from a friend, and she was on board from the get-go, which
Wow.
I think is unusual.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And I don't know if it made a difference that she's a DO, not an MD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I have a wonderful relationship with her still. This is 4 years out. And one of her first questions I'll never forget was, do you have somebody like a naturopathic or a functional medicine doctor that's following you and helping you through this process? And my husband was with me, and we both said, well, yes, we do. And she said, wonderful.
Wow.
You're going to need it.
Wow.
And that's when I knew I was in the right place with the right team for my cancer journey at that moment. So yeah, I can only speak for myself, but from what I've heard, I don't think that's maybe the common theme. I'm not sure why. So I'm hoping that changes in the future. But I don't think that's common. I think it was unusual.
Yes, I would say I would agree with you. Because in what I have heard in other people's stories is that there is much more of an antagonistic kind of, this is my territory, no one else type of sense. So that's awesome. That's great. That's awesome.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, that because you had this amicable relationship between all the providers in your care team, that probably made your process much easier because you didn't feel like you were being pulled one way or the other. So how did that go? Like, how did you actually facilitate the integration of conventional and holistic approaches?
I think, I think it was important that I was a self-advocate, maybe from the get-go.
Yes.
And with the help of my naturopathic doctor, understanding, okay, this is how conventional medicine works. Here's how we're going to approach it when you go in to see your oncologist. Here's how we're going to talk about what we're doing. That helped the process quite a bit. Obviously, it helped that my oncologist loved the idea that I was looking at nutrition and supplements, that I was incorporating fasting, which that was a little bit of a touchy conversation with my oncologist, for her own worries for me going through treatment, but losing weight. And in her mind, that could have led to a diagnosis of cachexia or me getting cachexia, which never happened. But I think it was me kind of working with my naturopath, asking her what I need to do, being very open and honest with my oncologist, saying, here's what I'm doing, asking a lot of questions, always questioning, why do I need to do this? What's important here? Explain to me the research on this. Why is this important? So I just had an open dialogue with both of them. They were never in communication, but I think because I was an advocate for myself, I was getting all the pieces answered that I needed from both of them as it all went along, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
So, you already mentioned that you were doing some fasting
Yes.
protocols, and coupled with, you mentioned, a metabolic approach, which would include a ketogenic diet. Had you thought about any of that, the fasting and the ketogenic diet, before you spoke to before your naturopathic doctor made these recommendations, or
No,
that was nothing you knew about?
Yeah, I really did not know much about that. I just thought, hey, I'm eating organic. I mean, I wasn't somebody that ate processed foods to begin with, really. But I didn't really understand the part that sugar and carbohydrates play in the cancering process. So I learned a lot, and then I started doing a lot more of my own homework and research about how that fuels cancer cells. And that's the preferred fuel that's their preferred fuel. And so I thought, okay, that makes sense to me. I can make these changes. And so, and I started understanding how fasting can bring you into ketosis, and how important it was to be fasting around my standard of care treatments. So I did almost a 72-hour fast around each treatment, the day before, the day of, and the day after. And that
And
was
these treatments were chemotherapy.
For chemotherapy.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And then it was even more important to be in ketosis during radiation treatment, which I also had after my surgery. So all that being said, I really changed my lifestyle to that metabolic approach to cancer. I followed that book, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. I bought many other books about ketosis around cancer, and that's what I followed, with the help of my naturopath, who was very much suggesting that this is what you need to do. This will create the best outcomes for you, and support me. Those treatments are extremely harsh.
Yeah. So talk about challenges that you had, like, the psychological challenges, physical challenges, anything you want to talk about there?
I had a great support system around, many friends, a wonderful husband. I felt like I had a great team. I was very fortunate to get acupuncture treatments during this time. So I felt like the biggest challenges for me was dealing with the fear surrounding just what was going on. I didn't find it challenging necessarily to change my diet. I felt like I was already pretty much there in so many ways just by eating healthy and having a healthy lifestyle to begin with. But so taking that next step wasn't too challenging. But I think the treatments itself were very challenging. Very challenging.
Physically.
Chemotherapy. Yes, very physically. And I feel, and I will always feel this way, that ketogenic diet and all the other modalities, supportive modalities. I did Reiki as well. I think all of that helped me really have a really pretty good quality of life considering what I was going through at that time. I didn't have that much nausea. I did have some bowel issues where constipation was an issue in the beginning. Maybe that was my biggest challenge. That got addressed pretty early on without extra medications.
Right.
You know, I really feel that it was the diet and lifestyle that made such a big difference for me and how I made it through standard of care.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and Dianne, to let you know, I did, just out of curiosity, I met with my husband reminded me of this, the registered dietitian at the hospital.
Yes, I'd love to hear this story.
And so we sat and she was basically giving me the standard of care pyramid. And was encouraging me to make sure I wasn't losing weight. And, you know, you need to eat all these carbohydrates. And it was very counterintuitive to what I felt was good, right for me and what I had been working with my naturopathic doctor. I'd only met with her once at that time. I thought, I'm just going to see what the dietitians at the hospital are telling people. And I thought, I can't drink Ensure.
I was going to say, I bet Ensure was on the list.
Oh my gosh. I thought, you're kidding, right? And I just walked out of there and I thought, this is such a disservice to people. I mean, it just, like I said, this is my story, but I just felt like it was such a disservice. The nutritional advice that I was getting was very counterintuitive.
Yeah, that,
yeah.
Crazy.
So yeah. It is. It is. So anyway.
Yeah. So, and at that point, you hadn't embarked on any of your own journey for getting education in nutrition, which, you know, we're going to come to that in a moment.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what question to ask, because I can't tell you how many times I hear that people who are at their sickest, you know, with whatever condition they have, and they go see a dietitian in a hospital and they get, you know, count calories, count grams of carbohydrates and fats, drink Ensure, and the quality of your food doesn't matter. And, you know, paying attention to, you know, the metabolic effects of the carbohydrates, that doesn't matter. And, you know, whatever you do, avoid animal fats and avoid animal foods, right? Because this is the pervasive belief that animal fats and animal foods in general are what's causing all of this from their perspective. And of course, a ketogenic diet is going to be including animal fats and animal
It
foods.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of really good healthy fats. And I think that's kind of what really, the more I started learning more, I thought we need to have more people like, I felt like I needed to educate more people about this, because I thought, who better than somebody who's been through it themselves to try and help others. And I thought, it's such a disservice that this isn't what's happening in the oncology setting, the standard of care oncology setting. So I thought, if I can make a difference, that's what I would like to do. So what happened when I was done with treatment is I actually did a terrain advocacy program through Nasha Winters, Dr. Nasha Winters,
Sure.
and her Metabolic Institute of Health. And I was in their second cohort, basically learning about the metabolic approach to cancer and following the Terrain 10 in her book. You know, cancer is very multifaceted, right? And it's not an easy disease. There's a lot to cancer, but addressing it metabolically is where I sit. I feel like that is the key. And I think it's been the key for me to stay cancer free. My oncologist is thrilled. I have no evidence of disease. I just had my 4-year, and she said, she I don't think she was supposed to say this, but she said, this cancer isn't coming back.
Great.
And I think she could say that in the sense that triple negative is very aggressive and usually comes back within the first 3 years.
Wow.
And so again, I am so grateful and so fortunate that I've been on the path that I've been, because I feel that I can share this story and hopefully support others in the exact same kind of journey. Because unfortunately, I feel like cancer's on the rise. It's not
going away, that's for sure.
And that's not going away.
Yeah. Okay. So, before we get into next steps, let's just make sure that for anyone who's listening who isn't aware of, why we're talking about the benefits of a keto diet and the metabolic approach to cancer, can you just give, a basic,
Sure.
why this approach is beneficial?
Yeah, once cancer starts, when it's in your cells, its preferred source of energy is glucose and glutamine. Or is it glutamine? Yes.
Yeah.
And so by taking away that fuel source, by changing the fuel that your body uses to ketones versus glucose, cancer can't survive in that environment. It doesn't like to grow. It can't use that as a source. It's not happy, and that's what we want. And so ketosis has been around, or the ketogenic diet has been around for a long time for different diseases. It started way back in the 1920s for epilepsy. I'm sure people have heard of Otto Warburg, the Warburg effect. More recently, Thomas Seyfried has done extensive studies. There's so much research behind why this approach works, especially in like certain types of cancers, like glioblastomas. Certain cancers actually much more prefer the glucose than others, but still, I think in general, it's the way to approach this from a metabolic perspective, because I don't think standard of care alone is the answer.
Yeah. And so you're really addressing two things. Number one, a ketogenic diet is one that's low in carbohydrates. Were you counting carbohydrates, and what was your threshold? What were you doing?
It was probably 70 to 75% fat, 25% protein, and about 5% carb.
Yeah. Okay.
So the very standard, like therapeutic. And then eventually I shifted over to a low carb, like more of a Mediterranean. But that was like 2 years later.
Yeah. Okay. So a ketogenic diet is one that's very low in carbohydrates, and you have to raise the fat because it is from the fats where you get the ketones. The liver converts those fatty acids into
Correct.
ketones.
Yep.
And so you're reducing the fuel source for cancer cells, which is glucose, by being on a very low carbohydrate diet. So you're, quote unquote, starving the cancer cells.
Right.
But by providing a substrate in the form of fatty acids to convert into ketones, you are providing an alternate energy source for all the other cells of your body to thrive, including your brain cells. Brain cells,
Yep.
they really do thrive on ketones. So you're providing an alternative fuel source for all the other cells in the body to thrive. And so that, not only helps, trying not to use like medical terms where we're implying that this is, a medical directive or medical advice, but we are reducing the ability of cancer to thrive and increasing the ability of all the other cells to thrive. And that is what helps in your support of your conventional treatment, where you're going through these very challenging treatments that are not only, chemotherapy is not only toxic to cancer cells, but it's also causing damage to other healthy tissues. And by being on a ketogenic diet, because you're providing them with this alternative fuel source that allows them to thrive, that's why you were able to make it through the treatment in a relatively healthy state. And then recovery from treatment was easier. I'm paraphrasing, and please correct me or add to what I'm saying, because
No,
yeah,
that's exactly correct.
yeah.
I was able to I had very little side effects. I felt that I was able to get through treatment more quickly. I had more energy. I had a much better, I guess that's what I meant by a better quality of life, is that
Yeah.
a lot of these devastating side effects, nausea, maybe the neuropathy, major GI issues,
Mm-hmm.
really, except for maybe in the very beginning, and then when I really transitioned into the ketosis, I really was very fortunate, Diane, and maybe whatever. I truly feel it
Mm-hmm.
was the diet that made that
Mm-hmm.
difference, and my
Yeah.
healthier cells weren't nearly as damaged,
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you mentioned that after going through this, you really felt driven and had a passion to share, and you
Yeah,
needed to get educated. So let's
correct.
talk about
That sounds good.
yeah. So that progressed and transpired into you looking for how you're going to get this education.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned I did the terrain advocacy program. I felt that I was really missing the nutrition piece.
Mhm.
My background's in marketing, advertising. We run a small business from home, so I do not have a science background,
Mhm.
and but I was so interested in nutrition, and I wanted to really specifically work in oncology nutrition. Um, and when I started doing the research, I found that Nutrition Therapy Institute was exactly what I needed
Mhm.
to get that really wonderful base knowledge, to move forward into being more specialized in oncology nutrition.
Mhm. Great. Good. Well, we're pleased you found us. And of course, you were able to participate in our program because it's an online program, that I
That was
assume
wonderful.
helped. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All
Yep.
right, great. And how was it going through a program where we really focus on the science, not having a science background? How was that for you?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think if I had any questions, the instructors were wonderful about answering questions, helping me through any of those moments where I wasn't quite maybe getting something. But I thought the material was very well presented. Um, for for what I'm going to be doing, I thought it was perfect.
Mhm.
I really, I'm very happy that
Great.
I'm a graduate of NTI, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
great.
thought it was awesome.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So now that you're graduated, um, what are you doing? And then I think it's also helpful for those who are listening to us, who, maybe have uh, for whatever reason, had to join this journey,
Mm.
and they're looking at integrating holistic approaches, I think it would be good to hear some advice from you. But tell us
Okay.
what you're doing now that you've graduated, and then we'll start talking about kind of like what are some basic tips you can give.
Okay, sure. So currently I am in course number 3. I'm continuing education with
Okay.
the Oncology Nutrition Institute,
Yep.
with Jess Higgins Kelly,
Mm-hmm.
and her institute. And I have one more course for that, and then that will be done in June, and I hope to get that certification. And in the meantime, I have my own business. It's called Source Nutrition LLC. I do it remotely, just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm already having people find me with the unfortunate diagnosis of cancer, but are looking
Yeah.
for nutrition support.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great.
that's where things are as of today.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm so pleased that you are able to share your knowledge and, at this point, expertise because of your personal experience in this area. I think that's awesome. So, what are some, someone who gets this diagnosis, usually probably comes out of the blue, and it is quite, I'm sure, shocking, scary, all the things that people kind of go through when they get this. It's a life-changing turn in their life, I assume.
yes.
Um, what are kind of first steps for people who know that they want to integrate in some way a holistic approach?
Um, my first suggestion is to breathe and
Mhm.
take a minute, and realize that you have time. Even though you have this this diagnosis that basically turns your world upside down, that you have the time to make sure that you know you're researching, doing the right things for you.
Mhm.
um, so not to be rushed into anything, right? But I think so. So that's number one. I think asking questions of your friends, other colleagues, whoever might be, people that that might have been in the same position. Um, what they would recommend. But I know for me, I think it was very important to have that support of my family and friends, and then find out, all right, how do I find somebody who's a naturopathic doctor?
Mhm.
um, and then do your research and homework. Like, you have time. Don't feel rushed into anything. Don't feel that I think standard of care makes you feel like you have to get in there yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I mean, I think you need to make sure you're comfortable with whatever you're doing,
Mhm.
and make sure that the advice you're getting feels right to you and
Mhm.
feels right to your family. And then take the time, and then decide from there. Um, but I think, yeah, that's what I would recommend. And I don't know if that answered your question or
Yeah,
answered
no,
your
I
question.
think that's really important because, again, in conversations that I've had with people, you get the diagnosis one day and they've already sort of set up your whole plan. They're like, okay, you're going to show up here tomorrow and you're going to show up here the next day. And,
Yep.
and it's like an assembly line
Yep.
almost, where they have everything. And I mean, it's great that they sort of know what's going to happen. So they've already set in place this whole system, and doctors just kind of slot you into that system. So that's, yeah, I mean, there are benefits to that perhaps, but it feels to me very rushed and very non-personalized.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think just knowing that you have the time. I mean, if can't most of the time, cancer's been growing a long time, right? And
Yeah.
there's no rush to treatment. Make sure this is what's right for you.
Hmm.
And get advice elsewhere, get lots of opinions. Read books. One of the first things that I did was I read the Metabolic Approach to Cancer book. because that made sense to me. And then I got the Keto for Cancer book. And then I thought, okay, I think I can do both. I can marry the two. So I think for anybody going through this, give that gift to yourself of just not feeling like you have to be rushed into anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Great.
know?
I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Is there, just out of curiosity, are there like, is there one, or I feel silly asking this question. Is there one or two like nutrients that would be beneficial in all cases, or is it very personalized and there's not? Like, could you say like vitamins? I don't know. Vitamin C would be great
Right.
for everyone, right? Because it's an antioxidant, it helps with collagen support. Like, is there any kind of like general, again, not making medical advice here, but
Right.
nutrition?
Nutritionally, I know a big thing for me, well, one of the things was making sure I had really good filtered water. Like
Okay.
I wanted, and we have good water where we live. I mean, I put in my zip code into the EWG website. It's pretty decent, but so I do have a Berkey filter that I use, have used for 5 years now, or however long, 4 years. So water was an important factor in that. I also feel that I wouldn't say supplements so much as just using food as your medicine. And so I would say focus on a nutrient dense
There you go.
diet.
Yep.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah, I think supplements help at certain moments, and there's certain things that may be contraindicated with chemotherapy. So those are things you really have to work with your practitioners on to make sure, because if you're going to be taking that stuff, you want to make sure it's doing its job, right?
Right.
So, but I think having a really nutritious, nutrient dense was such a big deal for me. I mean, through all the fasting, through all the keto, I think I only lost 4 pounds, and I'm a thin person to begin with. I have, a thinner frame anyhow. And so it wasn't an issue.
That's great.
When you're doing the healthy keto, not the bad keto, whatever, there's differences, but I feel like you have to focus on that nutrient dense food.
Yeah. Well, that is definitely my favorite, 2 words, nutrient dense. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. And supplements probably not ideal to generalize, but nutrient dense diet, you can always generalize that as being beneficial for everything. So yeah. Love it. Okay. Well, anything else you want to talk about that I haven't asked, or anything else you want to get out there?
Oh, I just hope that people understand how important, like, we know this, right? Where more even than I do, Diane. I'm new at this. I'm a newbie, but it's just so important for all these health issues that people are experiencing, not just cancer. And I think ketogenic diet can help in so many different ways. And I'm not saying that's the only diet. There's everything needs to be individualized. And I guess I want to leave it at that I feel that, each person needs to be treated individually. And that's something that I feel that we as nutrition therapists or a naturopathic doctor really looks at the person more individually. And I think that's the key to better health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right. Well, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was really inspiring and impactful, and I'm so pleased about your progress and how you made it through, and I'm so pleased that you found us and became a student and now are a graduate. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I'm just thrilled that that nutrition that NTI exists. It's been a life changer for me. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So happy to be a graduate.
All right.
Very
Lovely.
proud.
Lovely. Lovely. All right. Well, thanks so much, Adriana. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. You as well, Diane. Take care.
Okay. Hi, Dianne Kaler here again. If you found this conversation interesting and haven't already become a student at NTI, check us out at ntischool.com. We hope to see you soon.